Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Nahmaduhu wa nusalli wa nusallimu ala rasulihil kareem amma ba'd, and welcome to another video on the Islamic Knowledge YouTube channel. And before we go any further, if I can encourage you to please subscribe to the YouTube channel so that others can benefit as well, inshallah. And recently I received a question from a student of knowledge, and he asked this question about the books of tazkiyah, and he wanted to know about what books can I read to learn more about the field of tazkiyah and self-reformation. And I thought this video series would be really good to make for myself personally and for other people as well, to learn about books that help us to reform ourselves and become better Muslims, improve our character and become closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And therefore I've chosen, for the first video in this series, I've chosen these three books that I want to discuss, and they've been compiled by a scholar who lives in US by the name of Sheikh Tamim. This book, by the way, is not written by Sheikh Tamim. It's written by Sheikh Ashraf Ali Thanwi, and it's been translated by Mullah Kausar Hussain. However, it's with the oversight, or you could say the supervision, of Sheikh Tamim. And this is a book written by Sheikh Ashraf Ali Thanwi rahimahullah called Qasdus Sabil, and the full title is Ila Mawla al-Jalil, and it's all about the straight path simplified, the straight path towards whom? Towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this book is all about how to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and it contains about 10 advices which we're going to look at very soon inshallah. And this book is titled Veils of Darkness, Rays of Light. It speaks about the negative effects of sins and then speaks about the positive effects of dhikr and keeping the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala moist upon our tongues. And this book is called The Noble Muhammadan Litany, and it has compiled within it beautifully, by the way, quite aesthetic. It's got the translations as well in there, the morning and evening du'as, and I personally use these. They are very, very beneficial in the sense that it's so easy to have in your pocket and you can carry it around. And these are all, by the way, available in bookstores. I'm assuming even in the UK you can access them, and definitely all around the world using Amazon, etc. you should be able to get a copy of them. So let's have a look at the first one, which is titled Qasdus Sabil ila Mawla al-Jalil, written by Sheikh Muhammad Ashraf Ali Thanwi rahimahullah. And this has been translated by Mullah Kausar Hussain, and he kind of does mention in the introduction, as we'll discuss, that all of the translations and even annotations that he's got on this book, they are inspired by Sheikh Tamim and the discourses of Sheikh Tamim. And Sheikh Tamim is a fantastic scholar, really, really gentle, loving, and just he's been a huge source of support, inspiration for myself as well. He does message me on a semi-regular basis, and alhamdulillah we have good relations, good contact, and mashallah, just such a lovely, pious person, and as well as being a tremendously talented scholar. So if we have a look at this book, firstly it's a hard copy, really lovely edition, published, by the way, as you can see here, Noor Publications. They've published all of these, and they're really talented in their publications in terms of aesthetics. Really lovely front cover as well, hard cover, so you can see. And as we go inside as well, the aesthetics inside are pretty good as well, mashallah. The font is nice and easy. We've got different colors in the sense that we've got two different colors playing there, and we've got these designs in the middle as well that keep us entertained. Now, what's this book all about? So it's essentially 10 guidances or 10 hidayat that Sheikh Ashraf Ali Thanwi rahimahullah wrote for those who wanted to enter into the path of tasawwuf or tazkiyah or self-reformation, rectifying our soul, rectifying the inner self, so to speak, or the lower self as we call it. The first hidayah is all about the stages of suluk. Suluk is a path, the path towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Those who go on this endeavor, on this path towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, are referred to as a salik. He is treading the path towards Allah. So the first hidayah is the stages of suluk. What will you go through as you want to go on this path and you're coming close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? What can you expect? The second hidayah, sincerely making tawbah. The third hidayah, the signs of a qualified sheikh. So if you want to look for a spiritual teacher, but we're going to come to if you don't have one, what do you do? The fourth hidayah is the objective of a seeker. The fifth hidayah is sharia and tariqah. The sixth hidayah is the regimen, i.e. what's the daily routine that different people should have. The seventh hidayah is all about peace of mind. The eighth hidayah is on volitional versus non-volitional matters. The ninth hidayah is on matters of caution. The 10th hidayah is on sincere advice for men, women and the people of dhikr. And there are then 5 appendices. The first one is on the 5 branches of the sharia. The second one is on the institution of bay'ah. The third one is on the gatherings of the mawlid. The fourth one on the awliya and their status, their rank, etc. And the fifth one is on socialization versus seclusion. Now, Sheikh Ashraf Ali Thanwi rahimahullah would actually give this book to anyone who was planning to do bay'ah with him. So anyone who would be planning to do bay'ah, he would essentially give them this book. It is also noteworthy that this book, along with other books, were deemed essential readings before taking the path. According to Sheikh Ashraf Ali Thanwi, he would give you this book to read. So this is basically tasawwuf or tazkiyah, if you want to call it. The Quran mentions about the importance of tazkiyah to nafs, and this is in its most basic form. This book will help you to kind of understand that concept very easily. The book was actually even summarized, by the way, by the father of Mufti Taqi al-Uthmani, the late Mufti Shafi Sahib as well. And the translator mentions on this page here that this book was written by Shaykh Ashraf Ali Thanwi rahimahullah for someone who is essentially a beginner, wants to know more about tasawwuf, what is this field of tasawwuf, as well as the scholars. Now, in terms of the efforts the translator has made in kind of making sure that this book is an accurate representation of what Shaykh Ashraf Ali Thanwi rahimahullah wrote, you can see some of the efforts he made here. He says that he first compiled the annotations or the notes on the book, and then he translated the book, etc., using Sheikh Tamim's discourse as well. And then during this time, Mulana Bilal Ali Ansari of Chicago suggested that because our text was based on an older translation for the sake of accuracy, it was important to cross-reference the translation with the author's original text. Taking his advice, we began comparing the two, and in the process discovered many discrepancies and inconsistencies. He then says that they went back to an original manuscript of the book that was actually found in Darul Uloom Deoband, and Mulana Huzaifa Barucha and Mulana Shadman Ahmad, he really helped in acquiring this copy of Qasdus Sabil, and then the translator kind of worked on the whole book, so to speak, again. Now, the first advice speaks all about the different stages of suluk, and then we have sincerely making tawbah. As we know, we've discussed all the different sections that the book has, and I want to go through some of the unique features of this book. And now you've got 3 unique features of the annotation. So this book isn't just a translation of Hazrat Thanwi's teachings, they've also got annotations on everything he says, and there are 3 unique features of these annotations. The first one is that they present a hadith based evidence for almost everything that Hazrat Thanwi rahimahullah is mentioning in the book. So a good example of this can actually be seen on page 14. So if we go to page 14 here, we've got Hazrat Thanwi rahimahullah mentioning something. He says here, if the salik has any unfulfilled rights that are owed to anyone, then they should make a sincere effort in fulfilling those rights, or they should request pardon from those that they owe. Because if they do not make an effort to attain such a pardon, then despite a lifetime of spiritual exertion, they will not reach their destination. So what's the evidence for this? They now present the full hadith with the reference that it's in Sahih Muslim. So this is a good example of how they're backing everything up that Hazrat Thanwi is saying with a hadith. So you can see here, this hadith is in Abu Dawud and Tirmidhi. Everything that Hazrat Thanwi rahimahullah mentions, they back it up with a hadith. Another benefit, so that's benefit number 1. Benefit number 2 is that they sometimes give a context and they give a balanced understanding of what Shaykh Ashraf Ali Thanwi rahimahullah is actually mentioning. So if we go here on page 80, Hazrat Thanwi rahimahullah is speaking about making sure that you don't engage too much in worldly issues. So he says here that, you should try to stay away from heedlessness will not be eliminated. He says, even after recommencing dhikr, this form of heedlessness will not be eliminated because the heart will repeatedly drawn back to these worldly bonds. So does this mean we need to cut off the bonds with everyone in this world? So here they add, important note, what is meant by worldly attachment are those matters that provide no real benefit to one's faith and only serve as a distraction. Clearly, maintaining relations with one's parents, families, teachers, etc. do not fall under this. So they're giving some context so no one misunderstands what he's trying to say. The third benefit of these annotations is that they're filled with really relatable examples. So for example, what they will do is they will present an example. So here Hazrat Thanwi rahimahullah is speaking about the importance of how a sheikh must also maintain humility. So here they give an example that a salik should repeatedly remind themselves that they are a servant. Then he gives an example. Take the example of a handyman in the house of a king. The king has turned to the handyman because of his experience and expertise in making household repairs. However, only a fool would assume that this grants the handyman superiority over the king. Similarly, a salik should bear in mind that the people... So you can see in this way, they're taking what Hazrat Thanwi rahimahullah is saying and they're giving you a good worldly example for you to understand as well. Another example can be found on page 89 where Hazrat Thanwi rahimahullah is speaking about patience on this field. In this path, you will have to be patient. You will not become close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala literally in one day. Here as well, they give an example. When you water a seed each day, it benefits and grows every day, even if the growth is initially imperceptible. So we need to think of that the path coming close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is a bit like the growth of a plant literally from its seed. You may not see it growing, but it is growing and it will be getting there. Then you have another example here of where Hazrat Thanwi rahimahullah speaks about volitional matters and the non-volitional matters, or you could say the volitional matters, those wherein you do have a choice, and those issues where you don't have a choice. Here as well, they give an example. To understand this distinction, take the following example. A person plans to go out in the morning, but upon waking up sees that it is raining. So you can see they're giving you examples and they're trying to connect it with our path towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. On page 109, we have another example of this as well. So on page 109, we have Hazrat Thanwi rahimahullah speaking about reading Masnawi for beginners. He says the Masnawi of Maulana Rumi, he says that these books should not be read by beginners. He says, or any other compilation of the words and statements of the pious wherein their secrets, states, utterances or stories of spiritual ecstasy are recorded should not be studied by others, i.e. they should not be studied by by beginners. And here they give an example. They give an example using a worldly example to kind of understand this a bit better. The dangers of a layperson opening up medical textbooks and self-diagnosing are clearly understood. So that's what you're doing essentially by reading Mathnawi, etc. at a beginner stage might not be the best thing to do. Now, going into Hazrat Thanwi Rahimahullah's book itself, there are so many benefits inside this kitab and so many unique features. On page 10, Shaykh Ashraf Ali Thanwi Rahimahullah speaks about the importance of prioritization. You cannot go into this field and start neglecting your responsibilities. And Hazrat Thanwi Rahimahullah has a really balanced understanding of this. And in the annotations, you've got this deep discussion on learning correct prioritization and how that is essential to faith and that you can't forget your family. And then again, backed up with ahadith from Sahih al-Bukhari here that inna li jasadika alayka haqqa, your body has rights upon you. And they kind of balance everything out, that the path towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not mean that you forget everything and your responsibilities towards your family and providing them as well. Then on page 15, you've got this beautiful point on annotation 22. In the allegory of this poetry, rose-colored wine refers to the love of Allah. Just as those who are intoxicated by wine are emboldened with the courage to take on immense challenge, and the salik is deeply overcome with the love of Allah, they will find the courage and determination to face any difficulty on the path of Allah's pleasure. So the path towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not mean that you won't face any challenges. It just means that as you get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, those challenges will become a bit easier and Allah will give you the strength to overcome them. Then on page 17 to 18, we learn the balance of Hazrat Thanwi Rahimahullah, wherein he's speaking about the issue of miracles. And he's saying that this path of tasawwuf isn't all about just learning how to gain miracles and start becoming someone who can do, really weird stuff. And he gives a really interesting examples. On page 30, he actually mentions something quite, you could say he's hitting the nail on the head, where he says even devils sometimes see the angels, but in spite of these sightings, a shaitan remains a shaitan. So the fact that you can see certain things, you mustn't view these things as some type of, you've reached a certain status where you now don't need to do your fara'id, your sunan, you don't need to worry about following the sunnah anymore because you've reached a certain level. You see the balance in Shaykh Ashraf Ali Thanwi Rahimahullah's tasawwuf. You notice that it's all about making sure you're still following sharia, doesn't matter what state you've reached. In fact, in one place he actually quite clearly indicates the indicator that a person has become a kamil sheikh is that he never thinks he's reached that stage wherein he has become a kamil sheikh. The moment you think you've reached that stage, you're probably not a kamil sheikh at all. So then on page 37, there's a nice understanding of sharia and tariqah. So he says, thus the distinction between sharia and tariqah does not make them mutually exclusive, the way some ignoramuses claim that certain acts that are unlawful according to sharia are actually lawful according to tariqah. Rather, what he explains here in this section here, that essentially sharia is working on your outward actions and making sure that all your bodily actions are in line with sharia, and then you've got the tariqah which works on the inner. So sharia works on the outer and tariqah works on the inner, the heart, essentially. Then this is where the book really shines, which is the sixth advice, the sixth hidayah, which is all about the different types of people and what's the regimen, the daily routine that they should follow in terms of dhikr. And here, before they actually start this translation, there's a little bit of a note from the translator and from the annotator Mullah Kausar Hussain, and he mentions that any parts that Hazrat Thanwi Rahimahullah mentions that are a bit advanced for us, for example, anything about moving whilst doing dhikr, etc., or moving your head with darab, etc., that's too much, that's too advanced for us at this stage, in the beginning stage. So they're going to place that in grey. So you shouldn't really pay too much attention to that part. It's not for us. But what we should do is just kind of understand which category we fall into and follow that routine. And something that he mentions really interesting here is that in this section here, he says that if a person does not have a sheikh, or if a person does not have a routine or something prescribed by their sheikh of what to read on a day-to-day basis, then they should literally just read this. The more noble Muhammadan litany is one such example that was taken and compiled from the remembrances prescribed by the Prophet ﷺ to be recited every morning and evening. This is the regimen that is advised for all beginners. So this is something that Sheikh Tamim and his advice seems to be, and Mullah Kausar is obviously mentioning that here, which is that if you don't have a regimen prescribed by a sheikh, then you can just read your morning and evening du'as as prescribed in the Noble Muhammadan Litany and follow the sunnah and fill the extra time with Durood Sharif. And that's been mentioned by Hazrat Thanwi Rahimahullah. Here on page 76, Hazrat Thanwi Rahimahullah says, whatever time is saved by not doing these practices should be spent in doing some other form of verbal dhikr with an attentive heart. This can be done by sending salutations upon the Prophet ﷺ, and in my opinion, this is the best option. I.e., if you're not doing any adhkar other than the ones that you have kind of stipulated for yourself as part of your regimen, spend the remaining time essentially doing the durood upon the Prophet ﷺ. Now, there is a beautiful hadith here as well about spending time in the company of the pious on page 48, but the time does not permit. I don't want this video to go too long, but there's a beautiful hadith here about someone spending time in the company of Mu'adh ibn Jabal radiyallahu anhu. So this is a really, really beneficial beneficial book. I think you'll really enjoy it. The sixth hidayah, by the way, that we discussed is the actual reason. Hazrat Tanvi rahimahullah mentions that I've written this whole book for the purpose of this sixth hidayah, this sixth advice, which is the daily regimen that someone should have. And it's actually the longest chapter, which speaks about the importance there is and is emphasized upon a person who is treading this path towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for him to have a daily regimen of dhikr, daily regimen of these are non-negotiable adhkar that he needs to make sure he gets done every single day. Then the second book that I really recommend is this book, Veils of Darkness, Rays of Light. It's a very short book written by Sheikh Tamim himself here. Now this is the person who supervised the translation of Mullah Kausar Hussain, and this book is essentially the teachings of his Sheikh Mullah Hakim Akhtar Sahab. And the first part speaks about the importance of avoiding sins, and the second part speaks about the importance of dhikr. So the rays of light are essentially dhikr. And there's a really beneficial point here by Mullah Mahmud Hassan Gangohi rahimahullah ta'ala, and he mentions on page 49 here, anyone who has gained anything on this path has gained it through Allah's blessed remembrance. Maulana Rashid Ahmad Gangohi became who he was through dhikr, and so it is with all those who became closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that it was through dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that they became the people that they became. On page 54 there's a lovely quote by Sheikh Ahmad Zarruq, who said, the light of Allah's remembrance scorches away one's malicious traits. This dhikr by its very nature takes the base self, the nafs, out of its normal state of constantly inciting one to commit evil. It is for this reason that the elders of Tasawwuf prescribe salawat upon the Prophet ﷺ. So like I mentioned, the importance of salawat, filling our spare time wherein we're not doing the adhkar, the normal other adhkar, every other little, you could say, holes in our day should now be filled up with the salawat upon the Prophet ﷺ. Its effect is like water that nourishes and quenches and takes away the heat of the lower self. So these two books really beneficial, and this one is the morning and evening dua booklet that I would recommend everyone to have in their pockets, more or less, or keep it somewhere close by. It's just an absolute brilliant read. It's really convenient. Just go through the pages. It's really beautiful the way it's been designed as well. I highly recommend getting a copy of all three of these, and inshallah ta'ala I hope this video benefited you. If it did, please do give it a like and share it with someone else who may also benefit, and inshallah I hope to see you in the next video. Jazakumullahu khairan. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.